Good evening everyone and welcome to another episode of Scotland Shop on the Sofa. I'm Amy and I work in our marketing department, and joining me tonight is Jonny to chat about all things Clan MacNeil, our clan of the month for August.
Hi, I'm Jonny. I'm a student at the University of Glasgow studying history and business management, and I'm currently interning here at ScotlandShop as part of the Saltire Scholarship. And the Saltire Scholarship and ScotlandShop are both trying to do the same things, trying to keep the heritage and culture of Scotland going.
So let's get into it. There are over 500 clan and family associations registered around the world, and we love learning new bits of history and hearing from our customers about how they explored their heritage and traced their roots. We are by no means experts, just keen to share information. We love digging into the often bloody and brutal stories, highlighting the lesser known bits of Scottish clan history and the work of the clan societies around the world. So don't hesitate to chip in if we get anything wrong or you have anything to add.
Yeah, so as you said, throughout August we've been celebrating all things Clan MacNeil. So join us to discover the history and culture and some of the most intriguing stories, and learn what the clan has been up to in the most recent years and the older years. We've been learning about some of their more memorable battles, famous faces from old and new, and much more. We always welcome your input, so if you're associated with Clan MacNeil in any way and you have stories to share, don't hesitate to let us know in the comments below.
Clan MacNeil's history begins on the island of Barra in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland from around the 11th century. In 1427, another branch of the MacNeils was established on the island of Giga, with Torkel MacNeil at the head. The separate locations of these branches of the MacNeil clan became significant when in 1493 the Barra MacNeils showed allegiance to the Macleans in their long-running feud between the MacDonalds of Islay and the Macleans of Duart, while the Giga MacNeils fought alongside Clan Donald, but we'll get into more depth on that later on.
Today, the clan chief of MacNeil is Rory MacNeil. He's the 27th chief of Clan MacNeil, and how Rory gained this chieftainship goes all the way back to 1848, when the chief at the time went bankrupt and died alone. Not great. So this left the island of Barra to the Gordons of Cluny, who later sold it to the Cathcarts. The line of hereditary chief passed to a cousin who had already emigrated to North America, like many in the time after the clearances. So in a romantic turnaround, this chief was Robert Lister MacNeil. And then he returned from America back to Barra in 1937 and purchased the island, and subsequently devoted his entire life to restoring this great castle.
Oh, how lovely. Rory MacNeil, the current chief, has a fascinating coat of arms which shows some great pieces of art. So let's begin with the lion rampant in the top left, which mimics the royal standard of the King of Scotland. Throughout Scottish heraldry, the lion rampant symbolises courage, nobility, royalty, strength, stateliness and valour. The rampant lion became synonymous with Scottish independence, which led the English government to outlaw the flag in 1672, and it's still outlawed to this day.
One point to add about that, in that time it was after the Jacobites, a lot of Scottish things were being banned, like the kilts, the bagpipes. Although some of these things came back, this flag is sadly not. But they also outlawed a lot of the Highlands to try and make a bigger barrier, so a lot of that was happening after the Jacobites, because they realised they were just trying to break up the clan system because of the power it actually held, especially in places like the Isles and the Highlands. So yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. So moving on to the top right hand side of the arms, which shows a castle in the water, clearly depicting Kismill Castle, the seat of the MacNeil clan, which we'll get into later on. And the bottom section shows two things. Firstly, the three-masted ship, which represents either the seafaring nature of the clan or the migration of the clan from Ulster, Ireland to Barra, Scotland. Moving to the other side, we find the infamous Red Hand of Ulster, surrounded by 9 shackles, which represents Niall of the 9 hostages.
Great. So now to our favourite thing here at ScotlandShop, tartan. And we've got a few things to show you of the MacNeil clan tartan. So we've got all of these, and Amy's going to explain them for you.
Okay. So this is the MacNeil of Colonsay modern tartan. This is the MacNeil of Barra modern tartan. And this is the MacNeil of Barra ancient tartan. And these are all 10-ounce wool. So we use our 10-ounce wool to make our clothing or our home accessories, just because it's a lightweight wool, and it's really soft to wear, and it's really like versatile and flexible. And then this is the MacNeil of Colonsay Modern Tartan, but in our 8-ounce fabric, which is our lightest weight of wool fabric. And as you can see when you look at it compared to the 10-ounce, it does actually look quite different. Can you see that, Johnny?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so the 8-ounce has a much smaller pattern repeat, and we would use that to make ribbon and hand fasting ribbons, but also our table runners or our napkins, because it's actually machine washable, so it's really handy when you're having it around food.
After looking at those great tartans, let's have a look at the origin of Clan MacNeil and its name and some of the infamous members that have came from this great clan.
So the name MacNeil translates directly to the son of Neil. However, the true origin of the name MacNeil has been in debate within the clans forever. The traditional tale tells us the clan are descendants of King Niall of the Nine Hostages, whose descendants landed in Barra and founded the Clan MacNeil of Barra in the 11th century. Niall was a semi-mythical king and founder of the most powerful Irish royal dynasty, as his descendants ruled Ireland for 6 centuries after his death. Niall's rise to the Irish throne is captivating, as he did not have an easy start to life, as his mother left him outside to die as she was afraid of what Mungfind, the first wife of the king, would do to the baby. When he returned to Tara, the home of his family, he became popular with nobles, and they eventually wished him to succeed Eadcaid, his father, as king, despite the fact that the king had 4 other male children. When Eadcaid died, tensions rose within the family until a feast was organised to make peace. At the feast, Mungfind was sneakily attempting to poison her brother. However, he would not drink unless she did as well, which led to both their deaths. My goodness.
I know, this does sound like the way Robb Stark died in Game of Thrones, so I'm watching out. I know they say that came from Sweden, but I don't trust it.
Yeah, it really does sound like that, doesn't it? So, Niall took leadership of the clan and consolidated power in the northern region of Ireland, and created the aforementioned Neil dynasty. He continued to grow the clan by conducting a series of raids on Britain, France, and the Roman Empire, and is also believed to have been involved in the creation of a Gaelic kingdom in the north of Wales. During these raids in Wales, Niall captured a young slave and brought him to Ireland. That slave would later escape and go on to become Ireland's patron saint, St. Patrick. 400 years after his fascinating life, his descendants are said to have landed in Barra.
Despite the story of King Niall being extremely interesting, the true origins of the MacNeil clan come from the Vikings. The Vikings first arrived in Britain in 793 with the plunder of St. Cuthbert's monastery on the island of Lindisfarne in Northumbria, very near where we are right now.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
You definitely got stuck on the way across.
No, that's never happened to me.
Okay, so soon after this landing, the Great Heathen Army smelled blood and gold and began to attack the Isles and establish sporadic settlements. The Scottish island had been invaded and ruled by some of the most infamous Vikings, such as Ragnar Lothbrok, Ivar the Boneless, Ubba, Halfdan Ragnarsson, but it took until Ketil Flatnose to establish the independent kingdom of the Isles. And if any of you have ever watched any Viking TV show ever, you will know all of those names. So, 2 centuries later, Norse control over the Hebrides was finalised when the Scottish King Edgar conceded the islands to the Norwegian King Magnus III. The Vikings soon settled on the island, creating a majority of the infamous island clans that we know today. The Isle clan kingdom was very strong due to its strategic location to Ireland in the mainland, so the Vikings were able to go over and invade Dublin, as we realised, setting up that major city. Despite this, the kingdom of the Isles began to lose its strength in the mid-12th century due to infighting throughout the Hebrides. The kingdom came to an end in the 1250s and 60s when Alexander III launched an attack throughout the Hebrides, and the Norse power began to slowly decline. Finally, in 1263, Alexander III defeated the Norwegian king Hakon IV at the Battle of Largs. I think one of the most interesting things for me is when you're taught history, they always split the Vikings and the Scottish Wars of Independence when these wars were only 40 years apart. So it's really...
Wow, they feel like... Yeah,
you feel as if it should be maybe
ages.
3... Yeah, so it was the way they were split, which is weird to look back on that they're so close.
Definitely.
But after the Battle of Largs, which saw the defeat of the Norwegians, the Treaty of Perth was signed and the Norwegians relinquished all claim to the Hebrides. The Norse kingdom of the Isles was finally relinquished, but their legacy lives through on the clans like MacNeil and others like MacDonald and all the Hebrideans.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Oh, very interesting. During this 200-year period of control, the Norse settled in Barra and made Kismil Castle, which became the historic seat of Clan MacNeil for centuries. Kismil translates to Castle Island in Norse tongue, and it was not just the name that retained their Viking heritage, but also the people, most notably Ruri the Turbulent, known as the last of the Vikings. Ruri resided in Kismil Castle in 1560 and gained his turbulent name because he caused so much trouble for the Scottish government. From Castle Island, he raided merchant ships up and down the west coast, even hunting in the Irish Sea. No nationality was safe from the pirate laird, but his speciality was ships from south of the border. For this, the Queen wanted his head. Ruri was caught and brought to Edinburgh for execution, then famously stating to the king that he would be deemed good service to harass the subjects of the woman who killed his sovereign mother. This crazy last-ditch attempt to survive worked, and James VI let him go.
So one of the things I find so interesting about people like Rory MacNeil is that it kind of takes away from what you have this perception of pirates in your head, because we watch all these movies and all this popular culture, and we think we don't really get an idea of where they come from, but the large pirates during the Golden Age all came from the UK and Ireland, so they were all from there. Obviously there's a few, but there's all these great clans all have these leaders who went on to become pirates because of the clearances they needed to make money in other ways. And joining the navy was a lot of effort, needed funding, so there was a way that they could become like private armies almost, although brutal, but they were there to make money in the end.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah. So back to Rory. Rory regained control of the castle after he returned from prison, and his descendants still held the castle until 1795, when the fortress was hit by a devastating fire that led to its sale some years later. The heritage of Kismil Castle was slowly disappearing until 1937, as we spoke about, when Robert Lister MacNeil bought the castle and spent his life restoring it. In 2001, the castle was leased by the chief to Historic Scotland for 1,000 years for the annual sum of £1 and a bottle of whiskey. I'll be taking that deal any day.
Perhaps not as famously connected to the MacNeil clan as Kismil, Sween Castle off the west coast of Argyll was once held by the Clan Sween. Castle Sween is one of the oldest stone castles ever built in Scotland, with archaeologists dating it back to the 12th century. It is not just the age of this castle that is great, it is also the history. Sabine the Red, excuse the pronunciation, brother of the High King of Ireland, built this castle on the picturesque eastern shore of Loch Sween and created Clan MacSween with it. One treacherous decision changed the history of the MacSweens and the castle when they chose to side with the English in return for a promise of lands during the Wars of Independence. Bruce was enraged by this decision and arrived at Sween Castle after his victory to begin a long bloody siege on the castle. Bruce destroyed the clansmen, and the MacNeils were appointed to be hereditary constables of Castle Sween, with Hector Torpil MacNeil becoming the first of Tainish. The castle was in control of the MacNeils for a few generations until it became a pawn in the larger feud between the MacDonalds, the Lords of the Isles, and the mainland government. The pinnacle of this came in 1647 when the MacDonalds arrived at Castle Sween to prove a point. They arrived and destroyed this prepossessing castle that they once owned. That's sad.
I know.
They would destroy it.
The MacNeils who occupied this ancient castle were the MacNeils of Giga, not of Barra. The distinction between these two clans became extremely important during the long bloody feud between the MacLeans and the MacDonalds that went on for centuries. The first blood drawn in this war was in 1585 when the MacLeans slaughtered a party of MacDonalds of Sleat when they were mistakenly accused of stealing cattle, and the MacDonalds of Sleat and Duniveg retaliated. It does seem a little bit extreme killing people over sheep, but this was the 1500s. So the MacLeans on Giga sided with the MacLeans. I just say that twice?
Yeah, the MacNeils.
Yeah, the MacNeils of Giga sided with the MacLeans after the MacDonalds attacked their stronghold unprovoked and killed many of their clansmen and burnt most of their property to the ground.
My
A
goodness.
lot of this does seem to be silly decisions, this war.
Yeah, it does.
I know, wouldn't be me. Well, I would be killing sheep. Despite this, the battle came. The Battle of Gruvart Strand. Butchered that, but we move on, which will go down as one of the most important days in Hebridean history. This was where the power dynamics would finally shift towards one of the two leading families in the Hebrides. The battle was close until a MacDonald known as the Black Fairy climbed a tree and patiently waited for the MacLean leader to take off his helmet. The leader of the MacLeans was exhausted. After a long battle, he moved back to drink water, and as soon as he removed his helmet, boom, an arrow into his eye. Yeah, rough. The MacLeans now had no leader and began to scramble, and the MacDonalds did not stop and left over 280 MacLeans dead. The MacDonalds, who had come from a long line of Vikings, a lot like the MacNeils, defeated their foe, but at what cost? The Scottish government gave away their lands, and more importantly, their leader was killed, causing a lot of issues, and throughout the power dynamic between the MacDonalds and the mainland was always in a long fight, as we mentioned before.
In the modern day, the MacNeils have had many captivating individuals, with people such as Archie MacNeil, James Abbott MacNeil, and most famously Billy MacNeil, MBE, the first British captain to win the European Cup.
That's my guy.
Billy first signed for Celtic in 1957 as a defender, and this is where he met his mentor, Jock Stein. Whilst the MacNeils' career was on the rise, Celtic as a club were on the decline, leading Jock Stein to leave the club entirely. When Stein left, MacNeil began to wonder why he was still there and began looking to move away from the green and white stripes himself.
Wouldn't be me.
Luckily, Stein was appointed to be the first team coach in 1965 and the run of success began. Celtic won the first available trophy, the Scottish Cup, and set off on a run of 9 successive league titles. 9 is quite a popular number with the MacNeils, maybe that's their lucky number.
And Celtic.
Yeah. Despite all of these truly amazing achievements, the best came in 1967. Celtic entered the then European Cup and began to dispose of the champions from Switzerland, France, Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia.
Great one.
Then came the final on the 25th of May 1967. Celtic were facing the dominant Inter Milan at the Estadio Nacional in Lisbon. The underdog Celtic, who were all born within 40 miles of Celtic Park, went on to beat the Italians 2-1, making Billy MacNeil the first British footballer to hold aloft the European Cup. After his playing career, MacNeil's success never stopped as he returned to Celtic as a manager and saw extreme success within his 5-year tenure. Wow, look at him doing it for the MacNeils.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so there we have it. We hope you've enjoyed learning about this great clan and family, the MacNeils. Filled with all this knowledge and you would like to test your knowledge, just keep a lookout for the MacNeil quiz that will be coming out soon. And just remember to subscribe to our YouTube comment, email newsletter and social media for more clan content. Bye. Thanks.
Thanks.